Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question. How long will you keep trading your time for money and calling that freedom? Because if you're working harder and harder and still wondering why you can't get ahead, then you're not on the wealth path. You're stuck on the survival treadmill. And here's the truth. The middle class was never designed to create wealth. It was designed to keep you comfortable enough not to question and busy enough not to change. But today I'm here to tell you there is a way out. The ultimate path from middle class to wealth is not a secret. It's a shift in how you think, how you act, and how you value your own life. There comes a moment in life when you realize that the very thing you've been chasing is the very thing keeping you trapped. The middle class has been conditioned to believe that security is the ultimate goal. Get a job, earn a steady paycheck, keep your benefits, and one day you'll retire with enough to survive. But let me ask you a question. Since when did just surviving become the ultimate prize? Since when did life become about holding on instead of breaking free? Security is nothing more than a golden cage. It looks shiny from the outside, but once you're locked inside, you discover you're not living, you're only existing. That is not freedom. And if you don't break this cycle, you will spend your best years working for a system that will never allow you to own your time. The truth is, the middle class is not poor, but they're not free either. They are stuck in a holding pattern, circling the runway of life, never taking off because they're afraid of turbulence. And here's the hook. The very thing you're afraid of, the uncertainty, the risk, the unknown, is the exact door that leads to wealth. You cannot pursue freedom and security at the same time. One will always cancel the other. If your highest aim is safety, you will trade your best opportunities for a paycheck. But if your highest aim is freedom, you will use every paycheck, every skill, every resource to buy your way out of the system that controls you. Think about it. How many people do you know who gave 30 or 40 years to a company only to retire worried about bills, medical costs, and inflation? They chased security their entire lives, only to realize it was an illusion. The rules of the game are not built for you to win. They are built to keep you playing. Wealthy people don't play the game of security. They play the game of freedom. And freedom requires courage. You have to be willing to look at your life and say, I wasn't born to maintain. I was born to multiply. I wasn't born to work until I die. I was born to live fully, to impact, to create, to own. Now here's the shift. Wealth doesn't start with money. It starts with mentality. The middle class has been trained to believe that risk is dangerous. But wealthy people know that risk is the price of freedom. Every dream you've ever had is waiting on the other side of risk. Do you want to know why you haven't taken the leap? Because you've been hypnotized by the idea of comfort. Comfort is the enemy of growth, and growth is the only path to freedom. When you decide that freedom is more valuable than security, you stop asking, what if I fail? And you start asking, what if I never try? That's the question that should haunt you. What if you never try? What if you never break free? What if your children inherit your fear instead of your freedom? Let me give you something to hold on to. Security will cost you everything and give you nothing. Freedom may cost you something, but it will give you everything. The first step is to change what you're chasing. Stop chasing benefits, promotions, and job titles that keep you locked into a system. Start chasing ownership, leverage, and independence. You don't have to quit your job tomorrow, but you do have to change the purpose of your job. It should no longer be about survival. It should become the fuel, the seed money, the training ground for your freedom. Your job is not your destination, it's your vehicle. And the destination is freedom. So here's the challenge: stop asking, how can I stay safe? And start asking, how can I get free? That shift will change everything. You were not created to shrink into safety. You were created to expand into freedom. And the moment you decide that freedom matters more than security, that moment, everything in your life begins to change. If you want to rise above the limitations of the middle class, you must learn the art of leverage. Wealth is never built on hard work alone. It's built on multiplying the value of your effort. The middle class has been trained to believe that the only path forward is to work harder, to grind longer, to sacrifice more hours. But let me tell you something, working harder at the wrong system will not set you free. It will only bury you deeper in the same trap. The wealthy don't work harder, they work smarter. They don't trade time for money. They multiply time with systems, skills, and strategies. And here's the truth that might sting: as long as your income is tied directly to your effort, you are capped. You will never build freedom on effort alone. Let me ask you this: how many hours can you really work in a week? 50, 60, maybe 70 before your body breaks down. Even if you gave your job everything, your income would still have a ceiling. But wealth has no ceiling. The difference is leverage. When you discover how to make your money, your knowledge, and your relationships work for you, then you stop being limited by your hours. That's the hook you've been missing. The wealthy don't get paid for what they do, they get paid for what they cause. And until you make that shift, you will be stuck building someone else's dream while neglecting your own. Think about this. The company you work for uses leverage every single day. They leverage your time to create their profits. They leverage technology to increase efficiency. They leverage marketing to reach millions of people while paying pennies compared to the return. So the question is not whether leverage works. The question is, when will you start using it for yourself? Wealthy people ask, how can I scale this? Middle class people ask, how can I sustain this? And that one change in vocabulary separates those who thrive from those who survive. Leverage begins with mindset. If you believe your only option is to earn a paycheck, you'll never see the opportunities to multiply. But when you start asking better questions, doors begin to open. Instead of asking, how can I afford this? Start asking, how can I create the value that produces this? Instead of asking, what's the safest way forward? Ask, what's the smartest way forward? Safety locks you in, strategy unlocks the door. and strategy always involves leverage. Now, here's the reality. Leverage requires courage. Because to leverage your time, you have to stop doing everything yourself. To leverage money, you have to invest instead of just spend. To leverage relationships, you have to collaborate instead of compete. And that means letting go of control, stepping into risk, and daring to believe you can create more than what your job description says you're worth. People cling to control because they think it keeps them safe. But in reality, control is just another form of fear. And fear is the greatest thief of wealth. Let me give you an image to hold in your mind. Imagine pushing a car up a hill all by yourself. It's exhausting, it's slow, and eventually you collapse. That's the middle class model. Everything depends on your sweat. Now imagine getting inside that car, turning the key, and letting the engine do the heavy lifting. That's leverage. The effort is not greater, but the result is multiplied. Wealthy people build engines. Middle class people push cars. Which one will you choose? Your life will change the moment you decide to stop being the engine for someone else's dream and start building engines of your own. That might be a business, an investment, a piece of intellectual property, or a system that runs without you. The key is that your efforts should create results that outlive your hours. And once you taste that kind of multiplication, you'll never settle for survival again. So here's the challenge I'll leave with you. Stop trading all your time for money and start multiplying your time through leverage. Stop thinking about how hard you can work and start thinking about how far your work can reach. You don't get wealthy by effort. You get wealthy by impact. And when your impact multiplies through leverage, wealth becomes inevitable. If you want to break out of the limitations that keep most people stuck in the middle class, you must understand the power of specialized knowledge. General knowledge might get you a job, but specialized knowledge will create your fortune. This is where the great divide happens. The middle class often prides itself on knowing a little about a lot, being well-rounded, being safe. But wealth is not built on safety. Wealth is built on mastery. The world does not pay you for being average at many things. The world pays you extraordinarily for being exceptional at one thing. That's the shift that changes everything. Think about it, doctors, lawyers, engineers. Why do they earn more than most other professions? Not because they are smarter, not because they are more talented, but because they invested in specialized knowledge that solves high-value problems. And the market rewards problem solvers, not time clock punchers. Here's the truth: the deeper your expertise, the higher your value. The higher your value, the greater your income. So if you want to transition from surviving to thriving, you must stop chasing random skills and start drilling down into mastery. Here's the hook: the marketplace doesn't care how hard you work. It cares how rare your skill is. If 10,000 people can do what you do, your income will always be limited. But if only a few people can do it, and you can do it well, the world will line up to pay you. Scarcity creates value. That's why gold is worth more than dirt. There's plenty of dirt, but gold is rare. If your skills are common, your paycheck will be common. If your skills are rare, your paycheck will be rare. It's as simple as that. Now, here's where most people go wrong. They spend their lives collecting information without ever turning it into transformation. They read books, watch videos, attend seminars, but never commit to mastering one field deeply enough to dominate it. Information is not enough. Information is potential power, but execution is real power. And execution comes from narrowing your focus until you become the authority in one area. Wealthy people don't dabble, they dominate. Let me ask you this: what problem are you solving that people would pay anything to have fixed? If you can't answer that question, you've just identified the first reason why wealth seems so far away. People don't pay for effort, they pay for solutions. The more urgent and valuable the problem you solve, the higher the reward. That's why you must align your specialized knowledge with high value problems. Middle class people settle for jobs that require them to know enough to get by. Wealthy people seek mastery in areas that allow them to own the market. Specialized knowledge also creates confidence. When you know your field inside and out, when you have invested in learning what most people are unwilling to learn, you walk into any room differently. You don't just hope for opportunities, you attract them. People can sense certainty, and certainty comes from mastery. The middle class often struggles with insecurity because deep down, they know their knowledge is replaceable. But the wealthy walk with authority because they have earned expertise that cannot easily be replaced. And here's the final hook. In today's world, specialized knowledge can be monetized faster than ever before. You can turn your expertise into books, courses, coaching, consulting, content, and systems that reach thousands, maybe millions, without you ever being in the room. That means your specialized knowledge doesn't just earn you money once. It keeps multiplying in value. And the more you refine it, the more unstoppable you become. So stop scattering your focus. Stop trying to know everything about everything. Start drilling deep into mastery. The world will not reward you for being busy. It will reward you for being brilliant at what matters. And once you step into specialized knowledge, you won't just survive, you'll rise. If you truly want to escape the cycle of mediocrity and step into the life of wealth and freedom, you must understand the principle of leverage. The middle class has been trained to believe that hard work alone is the answer. Work more hours, take on more tasks, grind harder. That's the script. But here's the hook: hard work by itself will never make you wealthy. If hard work were the key to riches, construction workers, janitors, and farm laborers would be millionaires. It's not about how hard you work. It's about how smart you leverage. Wealthy people don't multiply their labor. They multiply their leverage. Leverage is the ability to do more with less, to amplify your effort without increasing your time. Middle class thinking says, I'll trade an hour of my life for an hour of pay. Wealthy thinking says, how can I create something once and get paid for it over and over again? That's why they build systems, businesses, investments, and intellectual property. 1 hour of leveraged effort can create value that lasts for years, even decades. That's the secret most people never unlock. Here's the truth: your time is limited, but leverage is unlimited. When you rely only on your time, your income has a ceiling. When you learn to leverage, your income has no ceiling. Imagine writing a book. It might take you a year to write, but once it's done, it can sell millions of copies for the rest of your life. Imagine building a digital course, creating software, or investing in real estate. These are assets that work for you, even when you're asleep. That's leverage. And leverage is the bridge that takes you from the middle class to wealth. Now, let's be clear. Leverage doesn't mean laziness. It doesn't mean you do nothing and money magically flows in. It means you focus your energy on building systems, assets, and opportunities that multiply results without multiplying effort. Wealthy people use other people's time, other people's money, and other people's knowledge to accelerate their success. That's why entrepreneurs hire teams, why investors use capital, why leaders build networks. Alone, you can go fast, but with leverage, you can go far. Think about this: the middle class often believes in job security, but a job is the opposite of leverage. It's trading 1 unit of time for 1 unit of money. No matter how skilled you are, there are only 24 hours in a day. The wealthy break that equation by building vehicles that make money independent of their hours. That's why they invest in businesses instead of just working for them. That's why they acquire assets instead of buying liabilities. That's why they scale instead of settling. And here's the hook that should shake you awake. Every single person already has access to leverage, but most never use it. Technology is leverage. Social media is leverage. Relationships are leverage. Your creativity is leverage. But the middle class uses these tools for consumption, while the wealthy use them for creation. One person scrolls for hours. Another person creates one post that reaches millions. Same tool, different mindset, different outcome. The moment you start asking, how can I multiply this, instead of how can I survive this, your entire life shifts. Every hour you spend can either be wasted or leveraged. Every idea you have can either die with you or be turned into something that keeps paying you long after you're gone. The wealthy understand this, and that's why they focus on leverage. They don't play small. They don't settle for trading time. They build vehicles that trade value. So stop measuring your worth by the hours you work. Start measuring it by the leverage you create. That shift alone can move you from a life of limitation to a life of abundance. When you master leverage, you don't just add to your life, you multiply it. And that's the ultimate path out of the middle class into true wealth. The middle class often looks at money as something to earn, spend, and save, while the wealthy look at money as a tool to multiply. That difference in perspective is what creates two completely different financial realities. Most people are taught to work hard, collect a paycheck, pay bills, and maybe put a little aside for the future. But here's the hook: saving money will never make you rich. In fact, inflation quietly eats away at your savings every single day. If you want to escape the middle class trap, you must learn to make money work for you instead of you always working for money. Think about it. Banks take your savings, pay you a fraction of a percent in interest, and then turn around and lend your money to someone else at 5, 10, or even 20%. They're not just holding your money, they're multiplying it. That's why banks are wealthy, while savers stay stuck. The wealthy don't hand over their money for someone else to use. They put it to work themselves through investments, assets, and opportunities that generate cash flow. They know that every dollar is a soldier, and the goal is to send those soldiers out to fight for more dollars. When you truly understand this principle, money stops being something you desperately chase and starts being a servant that works tirelessly for you. The middle class often says, I can't afford to invest. But here's the wake-up call you can't afford not to. If you keep working only for active income, you'll always be trading your time, and time is the most limited resource you have. The wealthy focus on passive income, streams of money that continue to flow whether they are working or not. Rental properties, dividend stocks, royalties, businesses. These are the vehicles that separate financial security from financial struggle. Now, let me give you a hook that should stay with you forever. Every dollar has the potential to earn more dollars. If you spend it on liabilities, it dies. If you invest it into assets, it multiplies. The middle class spends on things that make them look rich: new cars, bigger houses, fancy gadgets, while the wealthy focus on things that make them truly rich: cash, flowing assets, scalable businesses, and long-term investments. It's not about deprivation, it's about direction. The wealthy delay gratification today so they can experience freedom tomorrow, while the middle class consumes today and stays trapped tomorrow. But money working for you doesn't only happen in investments. It happens in knowledge and relationships. Wealthy people invest in learning new skills, gaining new perspectives, and surrounding themselves with people who are ahead of them. That knowledge and network becomes leverage. One idea can create $1 million stream. One connection can open a door that changes everything. While the middle class says, I can't afford a mentor, the wealthy say, I can't afford not to have one. That's the difference between seeing money as an expense versus seeing it as an investment. Here's another powerful truth. Money is abundant, but your mindset controls how much of it you attract and how much of it you keep. If you believe money is scarce, you'll cling to it, save it, and slowly lose it. If you believe money is abundant, you'll circulate it, multiply it, and grow it. The wealthy circulate money into ventures that create jobs, solve problems, and generate value. That circulation comes back to them in multiplied form. It's a cycle of abundance, not a prison of scarcity. So the question you must ask yourself is not, how can I earn more? But how can I make what I already have work harder for me? Because the truth is, if you don't learn to master money, money will master you. The middle class lives in service to money, constantly working, stressing, and sacrificing. The wealthy live with money in service to them, constantly multiplying, providing, and freeing them. And once you taste that freedom, you'll never want to go back to the old way of living. Most people in the middle class live under the illusion that safety comes from stability. They believe that if they can just get a steady paycheck, pay their bills, and maybe save a little along the way, they will be secure. But here's the truth you must confront. Safety doesn't come from stability, it comes from scalability. The world is changing faster than ever before, and the only real security is the ability to grow, adapt, and multiply your value. The wealthy understand this, while the middle class clings to comfort. And that comfort is what keeps them trapped. The hook is simple, but powerful. The comfort zone is the most expensive place you will ever live because it costs you your future. When you commit to growth, you position yourself to rise above the limitations that hold most people back. The wealthy don't wait for opportunities to appear. They create them. They stretch themselves, invest in skills they don't yet have, and step into environments where they are uncomfortable because they know that discomfort is the birthplace of transformation. Every breakthrough in your life will first feel like a breakdown. Every next level will first feel like you don't belong there. But if you stay committed to growth, the place that once scared, you will soon become the place you thrive in. Think about it this way. If you stay where you are, doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting what you've always gotten. And if what you've always gotten is living paycheck to paycheck, working hard with little to show for it, then repeating that cycle will never create wealth. The wealthy break that cycle by refusing to settle. They understand that growth requires risk and risk requires courage. But what's the bigger risk? Taking a chance on growth or spending the rest of your life stuck in mediocrity? The middle class fears failure, but the wealthy fear stagnation. That difference is what sets them apart. Growth is not just about making more money. It's about becoming more valuable. The market doesn't pay you for your time. It pays you for the value you bring. If you want to be paid like the wealthy, you must think like the wealthy. How can I solve bigger problems? How can I create more impact? How can I multiply value for others so that I multiply wealth for myself? The truth is, the size of the problem you're willing to solve determines the size of the paycheck you'll receive. The wealthy lean into this principle, while the middle class avoids it, choosing small tasks, safe choices, and limited results. Here's the hook that will shake you awake. You can outwork yourself for the rest of your life and still stay broke, but you cannot outgrow yourself and stay broke. Growth will always lead to greater opportunities, greater rewards, and greater freedom. This is why personal development is the foundation of financial development. The wealthiest people in the world read more, learn more, and apply more than anyone else. They spend less time entertaining themselves and more time expanding themselves. They know that every new skill they acquire, every new perspective they embrace, becomes a tool that can be turned into income, impact, and influence. And here's the most powerful part. Growth doesn't just change your finances. It changes your identity. The wealthy don't just earn more money, they become the kind of people who attract more money. They operate at a higher frequency with greater confidence, vision, and discipline. They stop asking, "Can I do this?" and start declaring, I was created for this. That inner shift is what allows them to create outer results. And once you taste that level of growth, you will never again be satisfied with living small. So, if you want to move from middle class to wealth, you must be willing to grow beyond your limitations. You must embrace discomfort, take risks, and stretch into arenas that scare you. Because everything you desire, financial freedom, abundance, impact, lives on the other side of growth. And the moment you commit to becoming more, everything you have will begin to expand. That's not just motivation. That's a universal law. So I leave you with this. The ultimate path from middle class to wealth is not out there somewhere. It's inside of you. It's in your decision to stop settling, to stop making excuses, and to stop playing small. It's in your willingness to embrace risk, to develop new skills, and to think bigger than you ever thought before. The middle class is comfort. Wealth is freedom. And freedom will never come from fear. It will only come from faith and bold action.